You're cute. I'm so glad you're here. Oh my god, this is my new favorite thing. And there's a siren. Hey nerds, what's up? Today I decided to bring Hedwig over here because we moved like everything around in our apartment because we moved David in, he's Matt's brother, so now we don't have like an office space, so Matt's office is like in this room, and then obviously we moved around all of our cat stuff, so now Hedwig hangs out like right over there in this bowl, so I just picked him up and moved him closer because I wanted him in the shot. So cute. Anyways, today, oh, are you gonna ditch me? Today's video is going to be all about villain stories because I was inspired by the news that we got a few weeks ago now that the Hunger Games prequel that we've all been waiting for more information about is a prequel about President Snow and his rise to power, and there was a lot of discourse on Twitter, which honestly I just don't go on Twitter that much anymore because it's too much sometimes. But there was a bunch of arguments and conversation on Twitter about how like nobody wanted to hear about President Snow because nobody needs to like see how the like nobody wants to feel bad for the villain type of thing. And I thought that like view on it was really interesting because one, even though some writers could and would definitely do that, like I don't see that coming from Suzanne Collins. Like she wrote this really intense story about like regime and stuff, and like to think that she'll write it like undo it all, I just don't think that that's the case. And like this is a prequel, so it's gonna happen before we get to the villainy of President Snow. I don't know. But then there's also the side of it where people who are evil and have Are you done yet? Showing off your big dick energy? Not done yet. I find that just putting people into the category of like end all be all evil really is like detrimental to understanding how they rise to power, because in real life most people are dynamic and like multi-dimensional and not just like Voldemort, who was evil from the time he was born to the time he died, and like the corruption of his soul just kept getting worse. Like those kind of characters are fun too, but I find a morally gray, not even morally gray, but just like an understanding of how you get to be such a horrible person way more interesting. So like I'm excited to see how a normal kid is going to turn into this horrifying, terrible, charismatic creature that takes over the world, essentially. It's the same thing with like, we talk about Hitler, and like Hitler rose to power in a way that nobody realized that he was going to be who he became once he had the power that he had. Like he didn't just like show up and was like, I plan to kill thousands and hundreds of thousands of Jews. Hire me, vote for me. That's not how that happened. And it's the same thing with today with Trump. Like he didn't get into the place he's in now because he was spewing racism and stuff from the very beginning. He first built him up as this businessman, as this famous dude. He had this aspect of it, and there's like a lot of other moving parts that have made it so that he could get voted in because of people not trusting the way our government works and wanting something different and not like establishment. That's all part of that too when it comes to how Trump got into office. And we'll see how this goes with the primaries coming up and starting, and that's a whole different thing. I'm really excited to see how this charismatic, energetic boy, who's probably nice and likable, maybe he's not, but I like seeing how that character, like, think about Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is a very scary, terrifying serial killer because he was charismatic and likable and people liked him in the community, and then he was killing women and no one knew about it. Like, that's why he's such an intriguing serial killer, because no one realized that it was him for such a long time. Like, he was, wow, why? That's why Ted Bundy's fascinating, and that's why it's also like, I mean, we could talk about how people turn into these horrible people all over the place, and that's kind of like the end-all be-all question of, like, we could get into the death penalty, we could get into lots of different things, because understanding how somebody becomes a predator or becomes a terrorist or becomes a leader who is tyrannical, like, all of these different things, they don't just pop up and, like, are born that way. Usually they are a product of both biology and nurture. Like, nature and nurture both play a part, and like science hasn't been able to figure out what part, how much is both of these things, because we can't study them separately. They are both so bound and intertwined together that we don't know how much it matters, but there is something to be said about the correlation, like, with predators and, like, serial killers and rapists and murderers and stuff. There's something to be said about the correlation we see with the traumatic events that happen in childhood, that sometimes that tends to happen in most cases, who then turn out to be predators. And that doesn't mean there's a causation there that all people who deal with trauma in their childhood will turn into murderers. It means that there's a correlation between having trauma and growing up to commit crime in that specific way. So I think it's also something to be said for somebody who rises into power and becomes a tyrannist, stuff like President Snow does, like Hitler did, like so many, like, there's plenty of leaders like that in our history. Like, how did they get to the power? I think that that's such a fascinating part. Like, how did they get there? How did they get into power enough to be able to build this system that we know from the Hunger Games, or, like, looking at real life stuff? This is so interesting. I'm so excited because I trust that Suzanne Collins will write a horrible, horrible story about how this happened, because it's not going to end well. Like, it's not going to be pleasant watching him rise to power. It's going to be horrific because it ends, I don't know how she's going to end it, obviously, but, like, if it ends still in the prequel setting, then we know what happens afterwards. And that's another thing that I find so interesting about people asking for, like, other people who won the Hunger Games, because, like, it would just be another Hunger Games. Like, it would just be Hunger Games 2.0. It's the same story we've already watched or read. And also, like, there's no hope. We know that out of the 24 kids in that story that get put in the Hunger Games, only one's gonna survive. We know which one it'll be. So it would just be about kids murdering kids. That doesn't sound that fun to me, but to each their own. I'm really excited for this book. I know that this is, like, really late on the train, and this isn't even something that anyone's talking about anymore, but, like, it's been on my mind for so long about talking about how people rise to power, and it feels especially, like, relevant to today. Like, how did this fictional society allow this man to take part? And I don't know if this is how she's going to frame it, but, like, is he the one that created the Hunger Games? Was it his idea? Was that, like, was that his thing once he got into power? Was that the way he ran, like, into getting into being president? How does the government work in this system? Like, those are some questions that we don't have. I'm very intrigued. I'm very excited for this book. What are your guys' thoughts on all of this? That was kind of like an open-ended discussion. I'm so ready. So, how do you guys feel about the new prequel for The Hunger Games? I don't even remember the name. It's called like Snakes and Sorrows or something. I don't know. There's lots of S's in it. And the cover is cool. So that's my thoughts on that. And I'm gonna get off of this. I make videos every Monday and Wednesday on this channel. So if you want to hit subscribe and see more from me, please do so. I hope you guys will also click the like button if you enjoyed. And I will see you guys very soon with a new one.